just keep clicking forward.
So I'm Catherine Riseng. I'm research faculty here at SEAS, and I'm an aquatic ecologist. I study rivers and lakes, and I'm really interested in the lower trophic food web, the algae and invertebrates that many people in this room will call fish food, their habitat, and the factors that control the variability in that community. I approach these things from a landscape perspective. What are the factors on the landscape? Things like natural land cover, the geology, the physiography, and also land use change, things like urban and agricultural land use, and how does that influence variability in these communities. I ask questions like the ones you see up here, is that how do these natural and these altered landscapes influence aquatic ecosystems, and how is that landscape change mediated into the community? What are the multiple factors that might influence these, the biological integrity? And are there thresholds in land use? And how can those changes from land use change, how can that be assessed, predicted, and mitigated? Now there's a couple of projects that I worked on. The one over here on the left here, it was looking at the low trophic food web in rivers in 3 ecoregions: northern lakes and forests in northern Michigan, the southern plains of lower Michigan, and this Knobs region in Kentucky. We looked at all those components of the community, and we were trying to understand how were nutrients influencing these communities. And it was a broad range of nutrient regimes. And what we found is that it really was the hydrology. Because of the differences in geology and physiography, it was the hydrology that drove those changes, irrespective of the nutrient regime. So landscape conditions that control the community. Then I worked on a project in Michigan where we studied the Muskegon River watershed, which is right around here. It goes from these high outwash plains in Michigan down to a drowned river mouth near Lake Michigan. And again, we were studying a whole suite of factors in the watershed. We were trying to assess the status and look at what were the potential future trends in rivers, lakes, and wetlands. And I was focused on rivers. And we developed a whole suite of, we were to do assessment. We were also doing models that looked at future conditions due to land use change and to climate change. And I was in charge first to look at assessment, and I was trying to do assessment of the rivers of Lake Michigan. And what we found is, rivers of Muskegon, what we found is that we couldn't do that. There wasn't enough variability in landscape conditions. So I ended up doing an assessment of the rivers of the state. The point there being that you had to look at the whole landscape in order to be able to actually do an assessment of a small watershed. Then I moved on to looking at assessing biotic effects of land use on rivers across the whole U.S., especially in agricultural watersheds. And here I looked at developing causal models that looked at how the effects of different landscape conditions, both natural and anthropogenic change landscape, affected the biotic integrity of streams, which here we looked at the invertebrate community, as mediated to factors like water quality and habitat. And what we found was that these regional variations in the landscape really did affect the strength and direction of these pathways. Finally, in the last 10 or more years, I've really been working in the Great Lakes, and I've, with a whole group of partners, you can see how many partners have been working on this project to advise us. We developed a geospatial framework that includes a suite of biological, chemical, and hydrologic data for the Great Lakes. Out of this have developed a whole suite of projects that have been used by the management community. We have done a coastal habitat assessment. I worked with Dick Norton on some of the coastal resiliency to look at how changes in water levels affect coastal wetlands. And I only have a minute here, so I'm going to move right on to the next one. The big project that just came out of this is a mapping of the aquatic habitat in the Great Lakes using a sort of ecoregion effect, identifying the key main drivers, depth, thermal, mechanical energy, and tributary influence to develop a ecological mapping and classification of the Great Lakes that are useful for monitoring, for assessment, and for restoration in the Great Lakes. And finally, I don't teach all that much, but what I regularly in the fall, I co-teach a course with Eileen Cotel in engineering. It's co-listed in PITE in engineering, and it's to teach about concepts and implementation of restoration in streams. And we work together with engineering students and students from biology to make them work together and learn each other's language. I also co-teach a couple of other courses. I also have taught a couple of courses.